There are pains that cannot be seen by the naked eye. They do not leave scars on the skin, but they leave deep imprints in the heart, quietly living on like waves of memory beneath the surface. These are the wounds of the past, moments of abandonment, harsh words, betrayals, or simply the feeling of being misunderstood, unheard, or unseen. Over time, we try to cover these wounds with a mask of strength, external success, or a forced smile. But deep inside, they continue to live, subtly harming both body and mind, preventing us from experiencing true happiness and peace. Every person, no matter where they live, carries within them stories of sorrow. For many in the West, the pressure of modern life, the demands of perfection, and invisible expectations from family and society made the past a burden hard to release. We often hear phrases like, "Be strong, don't be weak," or, "That's in the past, let it go." But does forced forgetting really heal us? Or does it simply push the wound deeper, allowing it to fester unnoticed? The Buddha never denied pain. He never told us to pretend to be happy or to avoid uncomfortable feelings. On the contrary, he taught us to face suffering directly, to observe it as an essential part of human life, and through this recognition, to find the path to liberation. When we reject pain, we only bury it deeper. But when we dare to return, to face and observe our pain with mindfulness and awakened awareness, something miraculous begins. Healing happens not because time passes, but because we learn how to understand and love ourselves. Many people live in the present, yet their hearts are stuck in the past. They may sit in a cozy home, beside someone who loves them, but their minds are drifting toward a painful moment of broken relationship, a childhood devoid of affection, a mistake they can't forgive. The truth is, the past cannot be changed, but how we see the past can be transformed. That change of view, that awakened insight is the key to freedom. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha taught, monks, one who lives attached to the past lives in restlessness. Clinging is the inability to let go. When our minds are constantly pulled by old images and voices, every new day is clouded by what's gone. We lose the present moment and the capacity to enjoy life's smallest joys. And what's most heartbreaking is that we often don't realize it is we ourselves who are holding onto the chain that binds us to old suffering. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. Letting go means choosing not to allow the past to dictate the present. It is to look at our wounds with compassion and say, I no longer need to suffer because of this. Letting go is an act of wisdom, and that wisdom doesn't come from books, it comes from mindfulness practice, from being present with each breath, each step, each thought. To let go of the past, we must learn to return to ourselves. Start by sitting in silence, feeling the breath moving in and out. Let the mind settle, and listen to what your heart wants to say. At first, you might encounter chaos, anger, sadness, regret, pain, but don't rush to banish them. Just breathe with them. Watch them pass by like clouds across the sky. They come, and they go. Nothing is permanent. This is the nature of impermanence. When we understand impermanence, we stop clinging to pain. We realize that while pain is real, it is not our unchanging identity. We are not our past. We are not our wounds. We are the one who can see them, transform them, and move forward. In the next sections, we will explore deeper how to practice mindfulness, meditation, and apply the Buddha's teachings to gradually heal these invisible wounds. But for now, allow yourself a deep breath and a gentle smile, a loving greeting for the healing journey that begins now. Once we have recognized the pain and wounds living in our hearts, the next step is to learn how to rest in the present moment, what the Buddha called the practice of mindfulness. In today's world, where people are constantly distracted by floods of information, images, responsibilities, and the pressure to succeed, the ability to stay grounded in the now becomes a precious gift. Mindfulness is not something mystical or supernatural. It is simply being fully present with what is happening in the body, in the mind, and in our surroundings. When you breathe, you know you are breathing. When you walk, you know you are walking. When emotions arise, you observe without reacting. This is mindfulness, and in that presence, the past slowly begins to let go. It no longer holds the same power over you as it once did. Past pain often causes us to live in reactive states. A single word, a glance, or a similar situation can trigger emotions as if the wound happened just yesterday. But with mindfulness, we gain the opportunity to break this cycle. Instead of reacting with old habits, we can pause, breathe, and choose a different, more awakened response. You can begin by practicing mindful breathing every day. There's no need to meditate for hours or find perfect silence. Just a few minutes daily, in the morning before starting your day, at lunch during a quiet meal, or in the evening before bed. Let your breath guide you home. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. This simple phrase contains a profound healing power. Why is the breath so important? Because it connects body and mind. When the mind is trapped in the past and overwhelmed by old emotions, the body is usually tense and exhausted. But when we return to the breath, we invite both body and mind to return to the present moment, where life is actually happening. Practicing mindfulness also means learning to observe without judgment. We don't need to label our emotions as good or bad. Anger is just anger. Sadness is just sadness. We simply recognize, like a loving mother recognizing her crying child, embracing it without scolding or rejection. When we practice this way with ourselves, over time, the old wounds begin to soften. They are no longer frightening ghosts, but parts of our memory illuminated by understanding and compassion. Another important point in mindfulness practice is not rushing to get results. It may have taken years to form our patterns of suffering, so healing should be allowed to unfold naturally. Some days you may feel peaceful, while on others, old sorrows may resurface. Don't be discouraged. Mindfulness is not about removing emotions, but living in harmony with them. Each time you return to your breath, you are planting a seed of awakening and healing. Western culture often seeks quick fixes: analyze, diagnose, resolve. But inner pain doesn't follow linear logic. It requires patience, compassion, and wholehearted presence. The Buddha didn't teach us to cure wounds like a doctor treats illness. He showed us a path to deeply understand, accept, and transform our suffering from within. In Buddhist practice, walking meditation, mindful eating, and working meditation are powerful ways to cultivate mindfulness in daily life. You don't have to be a monk or live in a monastery. You only need to live with an open heart and allow yourself to experience each moment deeply. Walking slowly on the path, eating in silence, working with love, this is the path of healing through mindfulness. As you practice daily, you will begin to notice subtle changes. You are no longer easily swept away by old memories. You can recognize when the past resurfaces, but you are not dragged by it. You learn to smile at your pain not because it is gone, but because you have begun to understand it. And this is the door to freedom, a freedom not given from outside, but arising from within your own heart. Freedom from the chains of the past. Freedom to live fully in the present. And from that freedom, love and healing naturally bloom. We often believe that in order to heal, we must eliminate sad memories, erase old wounds, and only hold on to beautiful things. But the Buddha did not teach us that. He taught that true healing requires the courage to face the darkness within. Not to blame or dwell in pain, but to understand and embrace it with a heart of acceptance. The darkness in our mind is not the enemy. It is the result of years of misunderstanding, unconscious reactions, and unheard suffering. If we continue to push it away, labeling it as bad or shameful, it will only grow stronger in the subconscious. But if we sit with it, look at it, listen to its voice, then the light of awareness begins to shine. Darkness cannot remain where understanding is present. Perhaps you've experienced betrayal, loss, abuse, or abandonment. These memories are not easy to face, and even thinking about them may tighten your chest. but precisely because we don't dare to look. The wound remains unhealed. It stays there, quietly affecting our dreams, our uncontrollable reactions, and our invisible insecurity. The Buddha taught, nothing can be healed unless it is touched with compassion. This means we must look back at the past with a different heart, not one filled with resentment or sorrow, but one filled with understanding. When we see how that younger version of ourselves tried so hard to survive, to adapt, to make it through, we no longer blame. We begin to love. Compassion does not come from outside. It blooms naturally from within when we understand suffering. In facing darkness, you may encounter old emotions, fear, anger, sadness, guilt. Don't run from them. Let them pass like clouds in the sky. They come, they go, but they are not you. You are the sky, not the clouds. This is a deep practice, not identifying with emotions. You have emotions, but you are not your emotions. A helpful exercise is to write a letter to the past, to the one who hurt you, to yourself at that time. Write all the sadness, anger, misunderstandings, and the words you never spoke. You don't need to send it. Just write to release, to listen deeply to yourself, to see more clearly. Acceptance of the darkness does not mean justifying wrongdoings or excusing anyone's behavior. It means freeing yourself from the burden of holding on to an old story. When you accept, you are no longer trapped. You are free to move forward, to write a new chapter in your life without being tied to the previous one. And from within that darkness, you may discover a light you never saw before, your inner strength. You have made it through all of this to be here. No matter how deep the wound, you are still breathing, still seeking healing, still searching for peace. That is not small. That is a sign of an awakening consciousness. Sometimes, awakening does not come from sunny days, but from storms, when there is nothing left to cling to. We return inward. When everything outside collapses, we turn to stillness, and it is often in what seems like the depths of despair that we find the path to liberation. It is the path the Buddha walked, and it is a path you, too, can follow steadily, gently, without rushing. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting, nor does it mean denying what once happened. Letting go, as taught by the Buddha, is an act of wisdom, the willingness to stop clinging to what no longer serves our awakening. The past, whether beautiful or painful, is still the past. If we keep carrying a heavy bag full of memories, how can we walk lightly in the present? The Buddha once told a relatable story. A traveler had to cross a deep river. He built a raft out of bamboo and wood, and thanks to it, he reached the other side. Once across, he decided to carry the raft on his shoulder, thinking, this helped me, it's important. But the more he carried it, the heavier it became, preventing him from continuing his journey. Similarly, even if the past once helped us survive, it doesn't mean we need to keep holding on to it forever. We often bind ourselves with thoughts like, I must remember so I don't repeat the mistake. Or, if I forgive, it means I condone the action. But in truth, letting go is not about forgetting. It is about accepting what happened for what it was, and choosing not to let it control our minds anymore. When we let go, we lose nothing. Instead, we gain freedom. Some wounds may seem long past, yet just one word, a familiar scent, or a familiar look can drag us back into old memories. This happens because, deep down, we are still holding on. We haven't truly released, and each time it happens, our energy is drained. The present is suffocated by what no longer exists. Letting go is a process. Sometimes we must release little by little an emotion, an image, a story. Perhaps today you let go a bit, and tomorrow, a bit more. It's a practice without a final destination, but each step is a step of liberation. One powerful way to make letting go easier is through mindfulness meditation. When you sit in stillness, breathing in and out, you begin to notice how your mind is constantly pulled toward thoughts of the past. And gently, you bring your awareness back to your breath. No blame, no force, just recognition and return. Each time you do that, you are no longer controlled by the past. Remember, no one can walk forward while constantly looking back. Every day is a new chance to live, to love, and to heal. But if we allow the past to define us, we are alive yet disconnected. Letting go is an act of strength, of someone who dares to fully live in the now. Regardless of what the past holds, if someone has deeply hurt you, you have every right to feel sad, to cry, to be angry. But after all that, you also have the right to move forward. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it is giving yourself the chance to be free. When you no longer wish for revenge, no longer need an apology, no longer retell the old story, that is letting go. And with that release, you will feel a lightness you've never known. Not because everything is perfect, but because you stop resisting the flow of life. You learn how to flow, how to open, how to live like a stream, flexible, clear, and at ease. On the journey of letting go of the past, without compassion, we may fall into the trap of denial or harshness toward ourselves. Compassion is not only a gentle light extended toward others, but also a soft radiance we shine upon the dark corners of our own hearts where painful memories, disappointments, and anger still reside. The Buddha taught that only true love and compassion can dissolve hatred. Just as darkness cannot dispel darkness, hatred cannot end hatred. Only the light of compassion can melt the ice of suffering. And that compassion, first and foremost, must begin with ourselves. We are often our own harshest critics. When we remember a past mistake, it's easy to fall into self-blame. I should have done it differently. How could I have been so stupid? If only I had been stronger, none of this would have happened. And so, the pain doesn't just come from the past event, but from the ongoing inner condemnation in the present. Self-compassion is when we can gently say, I didn't know better back then, and that's why I acted the way I did. But now I'm learning to understand and love more deeply. I deserve forgiveness. When we can embrace ourselves with that kind of understanding and tenderness, true healing begins. Practicing compassion can begin with the smallest of gestures. During meditation, instead of forcing the mind to be still, we can simply breathe in and out gently, acknowledging the wandering mind. When thinking of someone who hurt us, rather than feeding anger, we can silently say, I'm not yet ready to forgive, but I'm learning to understand your pain. These quiet words may open the doorway to profound healing. Compassion does not deny the truth. It doesn't ask us to accept abuse, betrayal, or harm, but it helps us see that behind every hurtful act is a human being also suffering. That doesn't make the wrong action right, but it can ease the tension in our hearts. And in that space, we can breathe, we can move forward, no longer chained to resentment. There are people in our lives we may never reconcile with, but that doesn't mean we must forever hold on to anger or blame. Compassion allows us to let go not because the other deserves forgiveness, but because we deserve peace. One day, when you look back at old wounds and feel a sense of lightness, no bitterness, no trembling when you can smile at memories that once made you cry, that's a sign compassion has worked its way through you. And at that moment, you'll know that true healing never comes from changing the past, but from the way you embrace it with an open heart. We often believe that time heals all wounds, but for deep emotional scars, time merely buries them beneath the dust of memory. There, they continue to bleed silently. A casual remark, a familiar scent, or an old song can awaken those long-buried emotions. Suddenly, the past floods back like a wave, overwhelming us with sorrow. The Buddha did not teach us to forget the past. He taught us to return to the present, because only in the here and now do we hold the power to understand, embrace, and transform. The practice of mindfulness or awareness is the key that opens that door. Mindfulness is not about sitting for hours in meditation or suppressing thoughts. It is simply the ability to fully recognize what is happening in the body, in the mind, and in our environment without judgment. When a painful memory arises, instead of pushing it away or getting swept away by it, we can simply breathe in and out and say, I recognize there is sadness in me right now. That's enough. This awareness, when practiced consistently, creates a spaciousness in the mind. Within that space, we are no longer bound by automatic reactions. We no longer have to flee from or fight our emotions. We can stay, observe deeply, and from there, gain deep insight. There are days when the past returns like a storm. Feelings of helplessness, anger, or fear surge within us and we feel like collapsing. But if in that moment we can sit down, place a hand on our heart, breathe slowly, and say, "This is just a wave. I will not be swept away. I am breathing," something miraculous happens. That wave, no matter how fierce, eventually passes. Practicing mindfulness is about building a sanctuary within, a place where, when the inner storms arise, we know how to return, take refuge, and heal. No one else can do this for us. And nothing but the present moment has the true power to heal the past. A mindful person is not someone without suffering, but someone who knows how to embrace suffering with the light of awareness. When we recognize this is anger, this is an old memory, this is a longing to be loved, we are no longer identified with them. We are the one who sees, no longer the victim. Mindfulness is not something grand or mystical. It lives in every mindful step, every conscious breath, every look filled with understanding. Each time we pause and listen to ourselves, we are telling the past, "I have returned. I will not abandon you again." And moment by moment, day by day, the past within us becomes less of a burden. It becomes part of the path, where we learn patience, compassion, and true freedom. In the light of mindfulness, a miracle begins to unfold. We find the courage to look deeply into the very things that once caused us the most pain. No longer running away, no longer swept away by emotional storms. We begin to learn how to sit still gently, patiently, and listen to our suffering. The Buddha taught, when we understand the cause of suffering, we no longer fear it. This kind of understanding does not arise from cold logic or analysis, but from a gaze filled with compassion and mindfulness. When an old memory arises, instead of pushing it away, we invite it to sit beside us like an old friend. We ask, "Where do you come from? What do you want me to see?" And in that listening, we begin to see what we never saw before. Perhaps the anger we've carried for years is not just about someone hurting us, but about a deep longing to be seen, to be accepted. Perhaps the fear we've hidden is an echo from a childhood where we weren't protected. When we see that, emotions are no longer enemies. They become doors that lead us back to ourselves. Looking deeply is a practice that requires courage. There are things we don't want to face: old wounds, unmet needs, moments of shame. But only when we dare to look, to touch them with awareness, can true healing begin. A person who has suffered but never looked deeply often carries bitterness and remains closed off. But someone who practices mindful contemplation gradually transforms their pain into understanding. That understanding doesn't just help us let go of the past, it also allows us to view others through the eyes of compassion. When we see that we, too, have made mistakes due to ignorance, we can more easily forgive others. When we realize that our pain is also the pain of many, we stop blaming, we become softer, more accepting of ourselves and of life. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha teaches us to contemplate the body, feelings, mind, and mental objects, four gateways to looking deeply into the truth of who we are. There is no healing more profound than facing reality with an open heart. And the miracle is this: when we look all the way to the roots, suffering no longer has the power to bind us. It dissolves, like morning mist and sunlight, not because we forget it, but because we've understood it. And it is this understanding that sets us free. After looking deeply into our pain, the next essential step is cultivating compassion for ourselves. In Western culture, many people grow up with the idea that they must be strong, that they must get over pain, and that vulnerability is weakness. Yet it is precisely this self-criticism and harshness that becomes the greatest barrier to inner healing. The Buddha did not teach us to fight pain, nor to suppress emotions. He taught us to observe them with understanding. and to embrace them with a heart full of compassion. And before we can offer compassion to others, we must learn to offer it to ourselves. Being compassionate toward oneself does not mean indulgence or excusing mistakes. It means having the courage to accept ourselves fully, with both our light and our shadows. When a child falls, the first thing they need is not judgment, but a gentle embrace. And our inner child, just like that, is longing to be held. Practicing self-compassion can begin with small affirmations. I am hurting. And that's okay. I don't have to be perfect. I am worthy of love even as I am. These simple words, if repeated with mindfulness, can seep deep into the subconscious and gradually transform how we view ourselves. Some may ask, how can I love myself when I've done wrong? The Buddha did not deny wrong actions, but he taught that everyone holds within them seeds of awakening and the potential for transformation. The past cannot be changed, but the present can, when we feel remorse with awareness and care for ourselves with mindfulness. That is already the beginning of redemption. Compassion is not an impulsive emotion, it is a quality cultivated over time. Each moment we choose gentleness over self-judgment. Each time we pause and breathe instead of spiraling into guilt, we are planting seeds of compassion, and those seeds, when nourished regularly, will grow into a lush inner garden. When self-compassion is nourished, we become more resilient in the face of hardship. We no longer rely on external validation or love to feel worthy because we have found worth within ourselves. Healing, then, no longer depends on others. It blossoms from a wholehearted return to ourselves. After cultivating compassion for ourselves, the next step in the healing journey is deep acceptance and letting go. In Buddhism, acceptance does not mean resignation or surrender to suffering. Rather, it is a clear awareness of reality, of what is happening within our hearts. Without denial or avoidance, acceptance is opening the heart to embrace all states, whether pain, disappointment, or fear. When we accept, we allow ourselves to fully feel the pain instead of repressing or hiding it in the dark. This is the foundation on which transformation and liberation can begin. Letting go is the act of releasing attachment to the past, to memories and emotions that cause suffering. Letting go does not mean forgetting, but rather not letting these things continue to control and imprison the mind. The Buddha teaches that all things are impermanent, constantly changing, and clinging to the past only creates more suffering. In practice, letting go is a process, not a one-time act. It requires mindfulness every moment, recognizing when we are drawn into negative thoughts and emotions, and gently returning to the present, when the mind learns to pause and not cling to the past. Peace and freedom gradually emerge. You may find it difficult to face and accept deep wounds in your heart, but it is this courage that is the key to unlocking freedom. Only when we dare to face the truth can we unravel the bindings and peel away the layers of suffering. Through acceptance and letting go, our soul is purified and renewed. The wounds do not disappear immediately, but they no longer weigh us down into the abyss. Instead, they become lessons and motivation to continue on the path of awakening. It is through acceptance and letting go that we can live fully in the present. With each breath, each moment, our soul is no longer chained by the past, but becomes light, free, and peaceful. When you have walked a long journey of looking back at your past, understanding your pain, cultivating compassion, learning to accept and let go, you stand at the threshold of a new chapter in life, a chapter of freedom and mindful living. This is no longer a theory or aspiration, but a real experience that manifests in every breath. Mindful living does not mean you had to become a monk or leave daily life behind. It simply means being fully present in each moment of your existence. When your mind no longer drifts into painful memories or fears of the future, you begin to feel life flowing miraculously right here, right now. Mindfulness is the light that illuminates darkness. It's when you know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, how you're reacting, and you choose not to be swept away anymore. Instead of being pulled by the voice of the past, you pause, take a deep breath and smile to yourself. You have the wisdom to know, I am no longer controlled by what has passed. From this place, every day becomes a chance to heal. A warm cup of tea, the morning sunlight, a sincere hug, all can become medicine if you live with mindfulness. You no longer run from your past, nor are you haunted by it, but live in harmony with it as a part of who you are, without judgment, without resistance. The Buddha did not promise a life without suffering. He simply pointed out a path to transcend suffering through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. As you follow these teachings, you not only heal yourself but also become a light for others walking in darkness. The path may not be easy, but each step upon it carries deep meaning. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be sincere, patient, and gentle with yourself. The journey of freeing yourself from the past is not about denying it, but about realizing it no longer defines you. When you live mindfully, you will see that even your deepest wounds can become gateways to awakening. You realize that you are not a victim of life, but a student growing from the very lessons that suffering brings. And then, in the stillness of the present moment, you hear the voice of freedom. No more bondage, no more resentment, no more self-blame, only the serenity and lightness of a soul that has let go and been reborn. So you have walked through the darkness with your own inner light. This is not the end, but a beginning, the beginning of a new life, where every moment is worth living, where you have truly come home.